All right, so welcome to the Truth Unveiled Joel Goldsmith tape group, to make it specific. And I'm happy that you're here. It's great to meet again and have some time to spend at listening to Joel, being in a meditation together, being, say, invited very gently and beautifully to truth, to an experience of oneness, because that's really the title. The topic today is it's not really a topic, it's what you are. It's like the experience of oneness. This is you. So there's no two-ness, there's oneness. And the invitation is to melt into oneness today. So we have the meditation to start with, in which Joel gives us everything already, and then we look at what's going on in the tape. Some parts we're taking a look at, and so some expressions about looking at yourself, looking at the progress in your spiritual journey, seeing that you actually cannot really evaluate that. That's also what Joel says. And the other part is then, it is a great talk where we're going to listen to. You probably heard it too. So there's a lot to discover in terms of this is what you don't have to do. All this you don't have to do. And then the step, you could say, to an experience of oneness might just suddenly come spontaneously to you, because that's always what we're talking about. So up to the moment that you catch a glimpse, you think nothing is happening. But when you catch a glimpse, you recognize and you feel the confirmation. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. There is a God. I can't believe it. Now I experience it. For just a moment, I got into the experience of something greater than myself, and so familiar and so lovely. Now this is going to be given to you. It's spontaneously coming to you. So it's like you can do all kinds of things. You can be very busy with it, but in the end it comes to you. So the elimination of factors that actually don't play a role in it, while you might think they do, is what we're looking at in the in-between time. But first we're going to start with the meditation, which is when you catch a glimpse. So there will be, you hear the words, there will be silence, and then you will be hearing the words again, and we listen to some music. All special requests today. Like there was a special request for the music, and I'll follow up on that. Once you catch a glimpse of your relationship to God, you find you cannot withhold. You have to be pouring, sharing, cooperating, and yet, because of the understanding of the nature of your hidden mana, you do not look for any return. As others come into this atmosphere of God, they also become pourers of good. I and my Father are one. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me. And it is in this oneness that I receive God's allness. Only in this conscious oneness do I receive the grace of God. Son, all that I have is thine. The more you believe that others owe you an obligation, the less you are realizing your own hidden mana, your own infinity by virtue of your relationship to a supreme source. You can really say, I've overcome the world, when you can set free every human being. Ah, so beautiful. Thank you so much for joining. That's so great. And the meditation, I really love to. It is a confirmation of how we know each other. That's so amazing. It's like, yeah, I know you. And you, when we got together, so to speak, the only thing you wanted to do is give to this and be part of it and share and do whatever was possible to extend yourself. Like that is why we're here. This is our celebration of that. And this is how we know each other. You want to give to this, like in whatever way, whether it has been like making transcripts of Joel's tapes, of doing like making videos for as a presentation, or making a recording of you sharing the meditation in your own language. This is what we do, and we don't expect anything back. We just give to it. And this is how we know each other. And how incredible is that? It's like that's totally unique in this world, you could say. It's totally unique. It's one giving, just in fact in line with what Joel was doing. He was giving and giving and giving and giving, teaching. Look at how many tapes he made. Like, look at wherever he went, he was invited everywhere. He went to New Zealand, to Australia, to Stockholm, to Amsterdam, to England many times, to you name it. It's like South Africa, flying in an old in an old days plane is different than today for sure. But it didn't matter. He had to be there. Simple. And he was in Los Angeles. He was in Hawaii. He was everywhere, like wherever. Didn't really matter to him. He was in Boston, he was in New York, he was in Chicago. He went everywhere. Did he expect anything in return? No. It's just an giving, because you have received something that, say, literally turns every law of the world upside down. It's like, no, there's no reciprocity, there's no sending a bill out or anything. It's like, no, this is freely given, and no, I don't expect anything back. I don't want to get into an exchange. Now this is exactly what Joel demonstrated, and what you are demonstrating to one another and to me in how you are present. So thank you for that. It is really beautiful. I know I don't have to say that because you don't expect anything back, but still, you dedicate your life to this. That's why you're here, and that's why this is so amazing, but you can't really, there are no words for it really. That's why I call it a celebration, and it's a very quiet, in that sense, a very quiet celebration, because it's happening basically within you. And that's just so incredible. So, yeah, great. I love it. So I was really happy to see these words in one of the letters from Realization of Oneness or Consciousness Transformed. I always exchange those, like Consciousness Transformed, with all the Hawaii talks of Joel, letters in 1963. So I love it. That's great. Now, continuing today then with the tape, and the tape is has everything to do with the experience of oneness. And, well, see, the experience of oneness, Joel talks about it in the beginning too. Like even Buddha, he meditated so much. He did everything before his enlightenment, you could say. He did everything. Well, Joel is talking about it. I will not call it up too much, but like there's a continual idea that it's failing, that like you don't make any progress, it's failing, and it's what can I do? Something like that. And the thing is, well, it's not about your doing, so it's about your being. And that makes a lot of a difference. So the recognition will be there if you, in fact, give up the doing and let it come to you. then in this moment something spontaneous happens, and suddenly there's the experience. You did not see that coming. It comes as it says in the Bible too, like it comes as a thief in the night, and you just are prepared. You have your lamp filled. You're waiting for the bride and the groom to come, but you don't know exactly when they will be there, but they will come. And you might as well just stay ready with your lamp filled. And filling the lamp is what we do here. Like you stay in your anticipation, you stay in your, it can happen any moment. There, we're open here to receive the guest. You could, yeah, that's a way of saying that. It's like you receive the guest within you. So there's a celebration going on. You're invited to the party. You just don't know when the party will start, but you get ready. And yeah, that's great. And I made some sheets to have some expressions, say, first looked at before you hear it again in the tape. I think that's a great way to do it, because when I hear them again in the tape, they suddenly fall into place even more than, but you have heard it already. And that's what I love about that. So that's why I use it. Experience of oneness. I and my Father are one, and all that the Father has is mine. Now Joel says this: the first thing that must be remembered is this: do not judge from appearances. Do not judge from the fact that today you may feel very ill, or today you may feel very poor, or today you may be having sinful thoughts, or today you may even be committing a sin. Do not judge from that as to whether or not you are one with God. Like, that has nothing to do with it. Just remember that the first thing that you must be remembering here is, do not judge by appearances. Do not judge by things that seem to be happening to you. And say, judge yourself into difficulty with yourself, because that's the only thing that's going to happen. But God does not know anything about that. So it's like, that is not a good way. I'm getting out of this. So it's not the way to judge yourself, to see how much progress you make. Like, I'm still doing this, I'm still doing that. Oh, I fall into the trap of doing this, or oh my God, I'm actually in pain right now, or I feel sick, or this or that. It's like, yeah, just allow that to be. Just don't use it against yourself, is basically what Joel is saying. Don't use that as a judgment against yourself or anyone else. There's no comparison to be made. So what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, is still like an image of yourself. It is not the truth about you. Now, if you use that against yourself, you're literally preventing yourself from having an experience of oneness. And you place that there yourself. So it's like, no, it has nothing to do. Your progress is not measured by how little you fall into temptation, or how little you call yourself ill or sick or who knows what, or poor. Like, no, that has nothing to do with it. It is the release of those ideas that will open your consciousness for a new experience. That is one of being one. See, it's like the mental plane is, in that sense, just a distraction of letting oneness come into your consciousness. You can keep yourself very busy with self-judgment, but that's not going to change the truth of you. It does change how you experience yourself, and that's up to you. You say you have a free will to do that, and you have a free will to release that. This is really what it is. Like, God does not know anything about it. He cannot but see you as whole and perfect, because it is His creation. You are completely connected. When you think something about yourself, you are already judging, and the judgment will be false. So that's a really good one. So here, this is the one that Joel starts with. And the next one is here. It makes no differences who or what you are one with God. You are only going to prove it in proportion as you attain the actual awareness of the relationship that already exists. It's like it makes no difference who you are or what you are. You are one with God. You are only going to prove it in proportion as you attain the actual awareness of the relationship. But the relationship is already there. Therefore, you must not judge by appearance of today, nor must you try to judge by your progress, because no one on the spiritual path can evaluate their own progress. So keep that in mind. I said this many times. It's like, because the thing is, you're judging appearances, you're judging images, and you simply are not an image. So being created in the likeness of God, you are what creation is, and that's not an image. You are what consciousness is. You are what oneness is, what joy is, what happiness is. That is what you are. Like, it has nothing to do with an image. It has nothing to do with your thoughts of what oneness or happiness is. No, it has to do with you being, let's say, the extension of the love of God, being a whole part of creation. And you have nothing to say about that. So it's really like, put it bluntly, it's like arrogance, thinking that you can define yourself in a limited way, thinking that makes sense, is what arrogance is. It's certainly what denial is. So there's no necessity for that. There's no use for it, really. It's like, okay, now you have that. You give that to yourself? Seriously? You don't have to do that. Now, what's wrong with releasing that idea? Why would you want to hold on to that? So this is really what Joel is saying. So every mystic, you included, has discovered that they meditated, they studied, they practiced, they did whatever they were instructed to do, in spite of not seeming to make much progress. And then, all of a sudden, in 1 minute of one day, or 1 second of one night, whereas before I was blind, now I see, and the old man was dead, and now the new man is born. That's what happened. Suddenly it is just happening spontaneously, in one instant. So it's like you catch one glimpse, and everything changes already. You come into a certainty. You experience a certainty. Suddenly the fear and the pain are gone for just a moment. You have a realization. I am with thee. Now we're not going to get this assurance in books or holy temples, or fasting or feasting. We're not going to get it through rituals, sacraments. We're going to get it only in one way, going for it where it is, within me. I am with thee, within me. That's where that is happening. No one can tell you how that is for you. You don't have to go anywhere for it in order to experience it. You don't have to make holy temples, or you don't have to have special fasting or feasting or who knows what you think you need to do. You're not going to get it through rituals or sacraments. Like, all the old ideas were not it. They were used as a way, in fact, to not get it, to not experience it, as a delay, as a power construction against it, you could say. But here it is within you, and it's happening. I'm not letting man know what I'm praying, and I'm not letting any man know what things I have need of. I'm not going to depend on man whose breath is in his nostrils. I'm not even going to depend on princes. I'm turning within, and if these teachings are true, and I and my Father are one, then God is right here where I am. I need go no further than right here where I am. So in other words, you cannot be in the wrong place. You're exactly in the appointed place to have an experience of the love of God. It's like you don't let any man know what things you have need of. You don't have to do that at all. Because of the fact that you're not weak. No, you're strong. It's like you are strong because in you, within you, is all the power of the universe, you could say. Not that you have to use that, but it is present and it will fulfill you, it will, say, supply, it will sustain you, it will love you, it will give you everything that you need, even before you ask. That is where it comes down to. So this is so great because, in fact, it is so close to what we are practicing here. We take a moment to come into ourselves, to go within, to have a moment of prayer, of communication. And this is exactly the place where it can be found. So it's like it is nowhere else. It doesn't depend on anything else. It doesn't come from anywhere else. There's none of that can help you. So here we are in our stillness, it's like literally in the talk too, it's like the secret of mystical life is within you. It is not in holy temples or in holy mountains. It's like it is within you, and you have every right. You are entitled to experience it. So that's why a release of judgment, self-judgment is great. And in fact, you have to forgive yourself that you're doing it. That's a part that, you forgive 70 times 7. Mainly yourself, that you do those things to yourself because there's absolutely no necessity for to do so. But you don't keep repeating that, forgiving yourself in a sense as if you're a hopeless sinner, or that you are so low in your development of spiritual attainment. No, that also has nothing to do with it. So, like I said, there's all kinds of things you don't have to do. Self-judgment doesn't work. You're not going to give much meaning of you are going to give no meaning, in fact, to that what you're doing. Whether you are, Joel gives the example, whether you have sinful thoughts or whether you do this or that. It's like you're not going to use that against yourself in order for you not to have an experience of your oneness with God, because the only one you are fooling is yourself. And why would you do that? So Joel is going to talk to us, and that's going to start in very shortly. So I'm going to pull that up, and we start right from the beginning of the talk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You will notice in this September 1963 letter, the subject is God as individual consciousness, and this letter is made up of 3 of the Sunday talks given at the hotels here this year. And you'll notice that the subject is the nature of consciousness, And then there's a subtitle, Your Spiritual Destiny. God is individual consciousness. The fruitage of consciousness at peace, and the dignity of the individual. And you will note throughout that this letter relates entirely to oneness, the oneness of God and man, or the original infinite way premise, God as, not God and man, but God appearing as man, which is the original premise. This work was built on two words, is and as. God is. And God is manifest as man. Therefore, there is no two-ness. And that follows the Master's teaching. I and the Father are one. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me. But there is a difficulty that arises in the actual experiencing of this, the living of this, and it comes about, first of all, because for centuries we have lived in the sense of separation from God. We have prayed to a God in heaven, or we've prayed to a God on a crucifix, or we've prayed to an old gentleman on a cloud, and we have always been taught God as something separate and apart from our own being, whereas the revelation of all the mystics has been oneness. Now, this is very difficult to believe. Very difficult. Because there is no time in your life when you ever feel like you are God, or when you ever feel that you are spiritual. You may have a few moments of emotion or ecstasy or seeming to be on cloud nine, but there'll always be an hour from now or tomorrow, and that sense of separation breaks in because you can feel to yourself, I cannot be one with God because I feel human. Probably even I have a physical pain or a financial lack. And if I were one with God, this could not be. All of this is based first on the erroneous teachings that have acted in our present experience to set up this sense of separation from God and to prevent us from taking the necessary steps that will eventually demonstrate, actually prove to us that I and my Father are one, and that all that the Father hath is mine. The first thing that must be remembered is this: do not judge from appearances. Do not judge from the fact that today you may be very ill, or today you may be very poor, or today you may be having sinful thoughts, or today you may even be committing a sin. Do not judge from that as to whether or not you are one with God. All that can tell you is that at this moment you have a sense of separation from God. It cannot prove to you that you are not one with God. It might be true that you will go on being sick for a while, or being poor. It might even be true that you will go on having carnal thoughts or sinful appetites, and that you might even sometimes succumb to them. That may go on for a while, but do not let that fool you, because that too is only evidence that the centuries have set up this sense of separation from God, and you have not yet attained the actual consciousness of your oneness with God. You are already one with God, and it makes no difference if you are the woman taken in adultery, the thief on the cross, or the tax collector. It makes no difference who or what you are one with God. You are only going to prove it in proportion as you attain the actual awareness of the relationship that already exists. Therefore, you must not judge by the appearance of today, nor must you try to judge by your progress, because no one on the spiritual path can ever evaluate their own progress. Actually, what happens is that we go along, sometimes for years, feeling that we are making absolutely no progress whatsoever. We have no feeling of progress. We may not even have an outer sign of progress. And then all of a sudden, one day or one night, a split second, like Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus, or like any of the mystics of whom we have read, Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, after years and years and years of searching, of having almost every wonderful spiritual teacher in India, having fulfilled all of what they told him, one to starve and one to sit on nails and one to walk as a beggar and so forth and so on. He also made no spiritual progress, so he thought. And one day, bathing in the river Ganges, he was so weak he could hardly get out of the river. He nearly drowned. It took the very last ounce of strength he had to get himself up on the bank. And then he realized the foolishness of all this fasting and starving himself, because it wasn't making him spiritual. And so for a while he ate normally until his body was back again where he could forget the gnawing of the body. And then he sat under his Bodhi tree and meditated, and lo and behold, the whole experience happened. And in this one probably hour of meditation, all the failure of all the years, all of the lack of demonstration, all of the lack of progress came to an end, and in that next hour he became the Buddha or the Christ. So every mystic has discovered that they meditated, they studied, they practiced, they did whatever they were instructed to do, in spite of not seeming to make much progress. And then all of a sudden, in 1 minute of one day, or 1 second of one night, whereas before I was blind, now I see. And the old man was dead, and the new man was born. Now, the reason that you cannot feel progress is that you cannot actually feel spiritual. There is no such thing as a person feeling that they are spiritual. That is as impossible as feeling that you are honest, or feeling that you are moral. You can be honest and you can be moral, but you can't feel it. You can just be it. There's no feeling about it. Nor is there any feeling to being spiritual. Being spiritual is a state of consciousness which you are, but you have nothing to compare it with, since the old man is gone. And the fact that regardless of how spiritual you really become, always there are human traits. Always. Jesus even goes into the temple and whips the money changers, which spiritually a Christ would not have done. Sorry? And he calls them vipers. which spiritually is a form of malpractice. And only because in every mystic there is always a trace of his human identity. And it is for this reason that you never feel wholly worthy. You never feel that you're really successful, that you're really making the grade. And it's good so. That was what Paul referred to. I do not claim to have fully attained. Certainly, I'm aware of how far I have to go before I can fully claim Christhood. And it is for this reason, then, that you must learn to disregard appearances. Learn to disregard that you'll have lots of days when you'll feel very human. Lots of days when you'll have reason to think that you're failing. Ignore all that. What actually counts that you can judge by is your motive, your inner motive. In other words, is there a drive keeping you on this path until you attain God realization? Is there something holding you to your meditations, to your studies, to the practice of principles? This is the only thing you have to go by. If there is something holding you to it, you are making progress. And then really it isn't you making progress, it's a sign that you have been touched by the Spirit, and it is not going to let you go until it breaks through fully. This too is a sign of error when we believe that it is by some virtue of our own that we are on this spiritual path, and by virtue of our own we are studying 8 or 10 hours a day, when this is never true. No human ever gets such a longing for God. What it really means is that the Spirit has touched us, and it will not let us alone. It isn't that we are wrestling with error, it's that the Spirit of God is wrestling with us until it breaks through. And so there's no use of taking credit for whatever amount of studying we're doing or practicing or anything else. Now, this brings us up then to the point of actual demonstration of our oneness. And this is the only way in which you will attain positive proof that I and my Father are one, that the kingdom of God is within me, and that the allness of God is already established within me. And that way is this. Since I am here alone, and since I am not making my needs known to the world at large, I'm going to meditate. And I'm turning within. Naturally, I'm borrowing now. I'm borrowing the wisdom of Jesus. I'm borrowing the wisdom of the mystics. I'm borrowing the teaching of the infinite way. Because probably up to this minute, I haven't proved that I and the Father are one. So I'm now accepting the fact that I'm on this path and I must prove it. And so I'm turning within myself. I'm not turning up to the sky. I'm not turning anywhere outside of my own being. I'm not looking around for holy temples or holy teachers or holy books. I'm turning within. Here am I, and according to these teachings, the very seat and source of God is within me. The abiding place of God is within me. God is within the inner sanctuary of my own being. This is the teaching that I am following and trying to live and demonstrate. Now, in accord with these teachings, I am not seeking my life or what I shall eat or what I shall drink. I'm not seeking my health or employment or opportunities. I'm seeking thy kingdom, thy grace. Really what I'm seeking is the assurance that thou art closer to me than breathing and nearer than hands and feet, and that thou knowest my need, and that it is thy good pleasure to give me the kingdom. And so it is that I am praying in secret. I'm not letting man know that I'm praying. I'm not letting any man know what things I have need of. I'm not going to depend on man whose breath is in his nostril. I'm not even going to depend on princes. I'm turning within. And if these teachings are true, and I and my Father are one, then God is right here where I am. And I need go no further than right here where I am. I must know what I'm going for. I'm going for thy grace, for the realization of thy presence. Like a child that walks across the street in traffic and can hold its mother's hand, it has no fears, doubts, or worries, because all it needs is the feel of the mother's hands, and it knows all is well. So with us, we need nothing in this world and nobody in this world, if only we can feel and have the assurance of this divine presence within us. Once we have that, we can go into a lion's cage, even before his mealtime. If we have this assurance, we can go out without purse or script. If we have this assurance of Emmanuel, God with us, we can have Pharaoh breathing down the back of our neck and the Red Sea rolling up in front of us. Because truthfully, what would anyone need more than to be walking around holding God's hand, feeling the presence within, having at least an assurance, I am with thee. Now, we are not going to get this assurance in books or holy temples or fasting or feasting. We're not going to get it through rituals, sacraments. We're going to get it only in one way, going for it where it is, within me. And so it is that in this meditation, I'm accepting that the place whereon I stand is holy ground because God is here. I am accepting God as omnipresence. I am accepting God as omniscience, the all-knowing, knowing what things I have need of. I am accepting God as love, whose good pleasure it is to give me the kingdom. Now remember, heretofore I haven't had these things. Heretofore I have known illness and lack and limitation and pain and accident, unhappiness, unhappy human relationships. Why should I expect them now? Why should I expect, rather, the good things now? Why should I expect the elimination of these evils and the manifestation of the good? The reason is that heretofore, even though I have had this relationship of oneness, I have not had the consciousness of this oneness. I have not had this inner assurance. I have not had a contact with the source of my good. Therefore, I have been living as a branch of a tree, separate and apart from the tree. And of course, I must eventually wither and die. But now, if I make this contact, if it is really true that I and my Father are one, that the kingdom of God is within me, then if I make this contact, if I receive an assurance from within me, something that either will say to me or let me feel, Son, thou art ever with me. Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. My grace is thine. My grace is thy sufficiency in all things. Once I receive this awareness from within, I will have the entire secret of the mystical life. I will then be enabled to prove that I live, yet not I. This Christ, or Spirit of God, within me, which I have now contacted and become consciously one with, now is the presence that goes before me, now is really my meat, my bread, my wine, is my hidden manna, is the meat the world knows not of. But you see, all the words and thoughts about this do not make the demonstration. This is the secret of the infinite way, that the only reason for the discords of this world is that we have not consciously contacted the source of infinite good. Therefore, we are living through the knowledge of our mind, which is limited to what we read and hear. We are limited to our own strength. We are limited to our own talents. And in that detached state, we have accepted a universal belief that self-preservation is our first law, and therefore do others before they do you. Now, if God is ever to function in the human scene and prevent the disasters of earth, the wars, the famines, the poverty, the tyrannies, the injustices, if this is ever to happen, it can only happen through making contact with the Father within to the point of realization. All of these words and thoughts that we have been using, you have already discovered did not make your demonstration. They did nothing for you. You went around saying, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich, and you were poor. I am healthy, I am healthy, I am healthy, and you weren't. I am spiritual, I am spiritual, I am spiritual, and you were still carnal. And the reason is, none of these statements are truth. They are the truth about the truth. And a teaching that is wholly spiritually correct is a teaching that says to you, these words will not come true in your experience until you have experienced the Father within you. experience the Christ within you, until you have received from within your own being this assurance of my peace, my grace, my presence. Then it will be so sacred that you will not talk about your religion. You will only share with those who show some desire to know God aright. And it will be so sacred that you will return over and over and over again to this inner communion. And one day it will dawn upon you, do you know what's right? I never had to go anywhere except within myself. Therefore, I and the Father must be one, because when I went within, I found the Father there. Maybe not the first day, maybe not the first month, maybe not the first year. Who knows? We are all differently molded in consciousness. My own search took many, many, many years before the realization of this inner presence was realized. Now, the point then is this, that once you realize that all of your reading and all of your hearing of the Word is merely for the purpose of giving you principles with which to work to develop your consciousness, so that you can sit down for longer and longer periods of inner quiet until that contact is made, then of course you'll find yourself on the right path. Now, sometimes an argument arises because some very miraculous things have been done with the power of the mind or the power of thought. In the three-dimensional world, mind is not only a great power, it probably is a greater power than all the matter that ever could be assembled together. Mind can be used for constructively helping oneself and others, and mind can be used to destroy others and the entire world, and in the end, destroy oneself with it. It was the utilization of mind through a propaganda bureau that brought the United States into World War I, after it had elected a president on the promise that he had kept us out of war. A few months later, he took them into war through a propaganda bureau that operated on people's minds, and within a few months had them shouting, "Let us get at them, let us go to war." All hypnotism, all propaganda, all mind being influenced. Three nights before the president was elected for his third term, he said to the public on radio, "If I am re-elected, your sons will never set foot on foreign soil in war." And a few months later, they were all on foreign soil in war. How do people get changed that way? Of their own accord, do they do that? No. They are worked on mentally. There is a power in the human mind couple of years ago, a form of advertising was discovered in which you could sell any product you wanted without letting the purchaser know that you are advertising it to him. In other words, you could make him go in and buy it even if he couldn't afford it, even if he didn't want it. Well, that was soon stopped because there was a higher power than mind about which they didn't know at the time. But on the three-dimensional level, the mind is very powerful. And if you or anyone were to persistently hold on to good thoughts and right thoughts and loving thoughts and charitable thoughts, you'd make some measure of progress in that direction, in altering your nature and character. On the other hand, if you just lent your mind to the obscene, the destructive, the carnal, there isn't any question about it that in a few months you tend to become that way and look like that too. Because whatever you are in your mind begins to show forth in your face. And so it is that on the third dimension, in the third dimension of life, which is mind and matter, you can make quite a power out of the mind, and you can choose. You can make it for good and you can make it for evil, because the mind is not a power, but an instrument. And it is the individual who is using the mind. And he's using the mind for good or evil through good thoughts or bad thoughts, constructive thoughts or destructive thoughts. So it is never the mind that is power. It is the individual on the human level of life who still can choose whether he will be good or evil, and whether he will use it for good or evil, or even if he's using it for good, if he'll be sure that he's using it for impersonal good, not just for my good, which may be at your expense. Now, I bring this out to you for this reason. Once you have chosen the mystical path, the spiritual path, you can no longer be either good nor evil. You then have no powers to be good or evil, because when you meditate and you make contact with the spirit within, it performeth that which is given you to do. It lives your life, and it is neither good nor evil. It is just spiritual and perfect and infinite. There is no such thing as good and evil in spirit. There is no such thing as rich or poor in spirit. There's infinity. There's no such thing as health or sickness. There's immortality. So therefore, when you are not living by bread alone, or exercise, or diet, when you are not living just from money alone, or property, or investments, but when you are living by the Word of God that you contact in your meditation, you are no longer living according to your will to be good, or your will to be charitable, or your will to be moral. This is no longer your choice. This no longer lies within your power. Now it is that every time that you go within, since the kingdom of God is closer to you than breathing, every time you go within and feel a release in there, the Spirit is performing the functions of your life, and whatever function you have will be done infinitely good, and it will be done eternally, not just for today or tomorrow and torn down next week or next month by a depression or a boom or a war. In other words, the evils of this world will not come nigh your dwelling place, because it won't any longer be you dwelling. It'll be the Father within doing the dwelling. Now, it is for this reason I make this a complete lesson, so that you will see that there are temporal powers. The germ theory or the hereditary theory or bombs or bullets, these are all temporal powers. And there are temporal powers of the mind. But in the presence of this, which is released when you touch the center of your being, these are not power. Neither matter nor mind can function in any injurious way in your experience. Matter and mind both become servants and tools, never destructive. And therefore, if we have a material body, it becomes our instrument to be governed and controlled by the Spirit within me. And since I have a mind and it's always thinking, then it isn't I thinking, it is the Spirit thinking. And those thoughts then are spiritual and eternal. And therefore, both mind, thoughts, and body, all of these, mind, thoughts, and body, become instruments for the Spirit. And my mind has to become a blessing to this world and all who come within range of me. My thoughts must be a blessing to all who come within range of me, and my body must be a blessing to all who come within range of me, because all is governed by the Spirit, which is released in meditation, which is touched and consciously realized in meditation. Without this experience in meditation, we are living really on words and thoughts, on that which is not the real power. It is only when the actual experience of meditation comes, the actual release of the Spirit, that I live yet not I is no longer a quotation, it is lived. Or the one which has been so prominent in my experience these last few weeks. Thy grace is my sufficiency in all things, and there is a sufficiency of thy grace ever present with which to meet the need of this moment.